It's April, crime month, money laundering, tax evasion, crime, and more crime. And also Christopher Ward have a new watch, GPHG got a new big chief. It's April Watch News. Let's, this time, plunge in. Picture one of the happiest countries in the world. Happy people everywhere, high living standards, impressive GDP per capita, and the least corrupt country in the world. This is Denmark. Idyllic, and so great that no one wants to leave when they experience it. But there is crime. In Denmark's second biggest city, Aarhus, there is a Rolex AD called Knud Pedersen Watches. Recently, the owner of the AD and an accomplice were sent to prison and ordered to pay a fine of $600,000 for tax evasion. Here's the question. Which watch brand were they using to evade taxes with? No big surprise, Rolex. They were selling Rolexes out of the back door and faking invoices claiming that the watches would be exported out of the country. By claiming that, they could sell them without paying VAT and other taxes on the watches. Problem was, the watches never left the country and they ended up being resold. So, money laundering it was. Now, I don't launder money. I do make videos, though, where I talk about watches. If you're new here and you want to talk, learn, and look at watches together with a person who isn't a criminal, then subscribe to the channel. It's hugely appreciated. Thanks for time. Which brings me to the UK. Because in the UK, in the picturesque city of Kent, I've never been there, but I'm assuming it's as picturesque as a UK city is capable of being, another luxury watch dealer was sentenced to 15 years for dealing drugs and money laundering. Which watch brand was the most confiscated? Yes, you know, it was Rolex. This was a watch dealer that was praised, had excellent customer feedback. 38 watches were seized, mainly Rolex, with a total value of $400,000. And although the watches in and of themselves were not necessarily acquired or part of the drug dealing operation, they were confiscated. It's not unlikely that the money floating from the drugs also made it into the watch business to finance purchasing of stocks. And although not at the core of the court's judgment, it's not outside of the realm of possibility that they also were a part of the money laundering side of things. I don't believe for a second that all or even a majority of ADs and watch dealers are dirty, but there are some. Watches, especially Rolex, AP and Patek and other desirable watches, they are a target for criminals. They are easy to get a hold of, they are easy to sell, they are easy to convert into liquidity, they are easy to transport, and pricing of them is intransparent at best. That means there's a huge incentive to break the rules. Watches as part of tax avoidance and money laundering are a known problem, and although not the norm, they definitely contribute to the challenges we have in getting hold of some of the desirable watches that we want through legitimate, reputable sources. GPHG is the Swiss watch industry's Cannes Film Festival. It's where the industry recognizes the best and most beautiful, complicated, and most influential watches of the year. If you are into high horology, you follow it. If you're a mortal watch lover, it probably passes by you without you ever noticing. They appointed Weih Koh, the guy behind the Rake and Revolution watches, as the head of their grand jury. And this is significant for a couple of reasons. In short, GPHG is the awards show for old farts and old farts with money. It has for a long time been incredibly Swiss-centric, and like I said, for a lot of watch nerds, it's largely irrelevant. It does for some people come across as out of touch because of its emphasis on a specific style and a specific price point, and of course, Switzerland. But the watch industry is under pressure. On the one hand, the market trend is moving in the GPHG direction. Brands are going upmarket. Brands are focusing on the really rich buyers, but the overall market is declining. I do think that the industry realizes that at some point also the high end is potentially going to decline. GPHG and the industry need to change in some meaningful ways. So AP choosing Ilaria Resta as their CEO and her selecting a team of almost entirely non-industry executives is a sign of one company thinking things need to change. And choosing Weih Koh, a Singaporean American-educated entrepreneur, and more importantly, a social media personality, is a massive sign of some people thinking things need to change. On the surface, he's a safe pick. He's knowledgeable about watches and the industry. But there are things about him that are more important. He comes across as independent, which is important for the credibility of the awards, which have long been and seen criticized for, let's call it, biased selection. He's also strong on media. He's a social media personality, and he has demonstrated an ability to market and talk about watches to a different audience than the one you would usually associate with GPHG. He's also Singaporean and American, making him both a global personality, but also more American and Asian than anything GPHG has ever seen before. For an industry that is dependent so much on the US and China and Asian markets for their growth, this is hugely significant. The future of the Swiss watch industry is in a lot of ways dependent on anything but Europe. Europe and Switzerland are not going to save a declining industry. But if you can make the GPHG show relevant to the US market and the Asian markets, that would be huge. This combination makes him not just a safe choice, but a useful one for where GPHG is trying to go. Obviously, picking some dude as head of GPHG is not going to transform the entire Swiss watch industry, but the pick is still significant because it says so much about where the industry is and where they think it needs to go. I would put my money on a couple of things happening for the coming or future GPHG awards. I would probably see more awards to non-Swiss brands, more exposure to up-and-coming brands, more recognition of Asian and American brands, a change in setting, style, and tone that appeals to a different kind of audience. Less stuffy and more cool. Depending on his influence level, I could even see GPHG trying to become more broadly appealing. So if you think of a continuum from Cannes Film Festival on the one end and the MTV Awards on the other, then I see it moving not all the way to MTV, but more towards that sort of popular, broadly appealing continuum. And why do I see that? I see that because in the long term, you need people buying watches at the low end to have aspirations towards the high end. Because when the low end dies, that's where the support for the high end interest eventually, comes from. And if the support dies, then in the long term, the high end dies too. Oh no, Mike's talking about Christopher Ward again. Yes, I am. But this time it's critique. A little bit of praise, but mostly critique. The new True GMT C63 Sealander is a 40.4mm watch with a 14.15mm thickness. That's not great, but it's not the most important part of this conversation. It's 48mm lug to lug. That's okay. 22mm lug width. That's fine. It's a True GMT, also good. $4,135 on a bracelet. This watch is in the best category of Christopher Ward's strategy of having models that are good, better, or best. This is as specced out as you can get from Christopher Ward, just like the Weih Koh or the Bel Canto. The key selling point here is the movement, which is a fully Christopher Ward developed movement. They took one of their existing in-house movements and spent 3 years developing this new integrated movement. It's got a total of 23 parts, which were added to the caliber. Of these, 16 are newly designed and 7 were modified from existing CW001 parts. The new CW002 operates at 28,800 vibrations per hour and offers a huge 120 hours of power reserve. COSC certified, -4 to +6 seconds per day. This is where Christopher Ward deserves praise. The reason Omega, Breitling, Rolex, and other high-end brands can't allow themselves to get complacent is because of brands like Christopher Ward, Yema, and others. Brands that at a lower price point are trying to offer value and push the envelope on what you can expect from a value brand. 120 hours of power reserve is a lot. IWC will charge you $6,000 in the Mark 20 for the privilege of 120 hours of power reserve, and then you get no GMT function or power reserve with IWC. COSC, 120 hours, GMT, power reserve. Tudor doesn't have a watch that can do all those things. Tudor will also charge you $5,000 for their 70-hour COSC certified GMT on a steel bracelet. Yema with their CMM modules, other brands, they push the envelope and it makes the value space relevant and it pushes the higher end to compete as well. And yes, it's an expensive Christopher Ward, as are some of the in-house Yemas, but you have to consider what it would cost from Tudor or Breitling or IWC. This is competition and its features, and you can hate on Christopher Ward all you want, but this is meaningful for the industry. Which brings me to the criticism. When brands do something cool, like a movement, they want to make sure the world hears about it. In those situations, they make what I call talking piece watches. Watches that are made more for advertising and not necessarily made to move a ton of product. Zenith does this with skeletonized ceramic watches. Omega does it with watches like the $600,000 Armand Duplantis Aquaterra. It's normal to do this thing. I'm cognizant of the likelihood that this is the main purpose of this watch. But sometimes, just sometimes, I get the feeling that CW designs in their best category go a little bit overboard. Their success with the bel canto has in some ways pushed them to try their hand at high horology aesthetics. The Loco, the 12X, the Jump Hour, the Studio Underdog pocket watch, and this watch. This watch, this dial is just a bit much. And I get it. You want to show off everything this movement can do, and you're so proud of it. And but like a person wrote in the comments of Fratello watches, it's a tool watch that accidentally swallowed a bel canto and a power reserve indicator. It's essentially a professional hiker who showed up to the trail in a tuxedo and a monocle, which is technically impressive but undeniably confused about the mission. I see some great individual design elements, but when put together, they remind me of the old idiom, a camel is a horse designed by a committee. I feel Christopher Ward are at their best aesthetically just below this best price point. They've nailed one of the best bracelets in the business. The Lumiere is a brilliant diver. The Dune is good. The Standard 12, aesthetics-wise, that's where they really excel. And I'm not saying they shouldn't do this kind of watch, but visually, it's a committee camel. That is what I thought was worth covering in April. We've got Watches and Wonders coming up soon. I will be there, and I will be visiting a few factories while I'm down there. So I'm really looking forward to it. If you are down there and you see me, say hi. I would be happy to shake your hand. Like, subscribe. Cheers.